But how many? Look at the international community, our daily saying election is not war. It's like they keep giving us the same advice every 4 years.
Well, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the patronizing attitude, especially of Western countries. And then the decision by some parties in Nigeria to threaten and terrorize Nigeria with the Venezuela option. Look, like somebody pointed out, Nigeria is not a colony. I grew up under colonialism when black kids like me could not attend Corona, could not attend Grange, even though we lived in the GRA. There was apartheid in this country. The country club was reserved for white people. Luckily or mercifully, we've gotten our independence, and we have to remind the do-gooders from abroad to temper their emotions. Okay, they should not be giving us tutorial lessons. We have a history to make or mar. They can observe, as somebody said, but they should not interfere or intervene. Article 2, paragraph 4 of the UN Charter stipulates a non-interference in the domestic affairs of states.
But it's the same we Nigerians that call on the international community. I mean, political parties do that all the time, calling on the international communities to prevail on the president or to prevail on the state to do one thing, to do another. That should give you some concern as well.
Well, there's a lot of ignorance in high places in this country. But it seems that the West is rewriting the rules of international law that we studied, because the sort of attitude they adopted with respect to Venezuela is most unbecoming. The Venezuelans have the right to go to heaven the way they want. I should not tell them this is the only path to success, to El Dorado. Having been an observer myself, in elections out of this country, I was so conscious not to be grandstanding or purporting to offer lessons to the countries I visited on how to go about things. Your job as an observer is to observe and then write a report which will be submitted to the state in question for future use. But the attitude adopted, especially by some ambassadors in this country, is most embarrassing.
Did we give them an inch and then they took a mile?
Well, that's what your colleague is alluding to, that we asked for it. In international law, in law generally, we say voluntary non-fit injuria. Since you invited them on board, then you've impliedly absolved them.
Because I know the INEC says, look, just come in and observe. Because normally when they observe, they usually have to report to INEC. But if they go beyond where you then say they start making certain comments or trying to insist on certain things, it depends on what they're insisting on, then we can say, yeah, we can draw the line, can't we?
Well, you see, despite the fact that we want to pretend that we've come of age and all that, we still are a dependency. We depend on these countries for input into our national economy, and we cavort and carousel with these powers. We want their approval. Forget that we went to school in their countries. Okay, but what I find galling is that international law has now been bifurcated. The international law for certain countries is different from the general international law. They treat with flagrant nonchalance the national sovereignty of the poorer nations of the world.
It's all about interest.
Pardon me?
It's all about interest.
Yes, but they too should be interested in a wholesome world, okay, where nobody or no country, no people are considered as second class, as beholden to others. When we talk of equality of states, it's formal, nominal equality. But the way things are playing out I use the example of Venezuela, and some of the Nigerian politicians are invoking.
Okay. Well, we've since been joined by Mr. Tommy Vincent. He's a legal practitioner. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, but we're speaking about the history, the elections, what played out at the time with Prof.
Indeed, and there was something you mentioned. You talked about reports that they have sent, and this is over the years, over the times that we've had these elections. I think, for example, Commonwealth observers, they concluded after 2003 that most states where most electors were able to vote freely and the results reflected the wishes of the people. However, there were widespread serious irregularities and vote rigging. When it came to 2007, they said, well, it appeared full, free and fair, but they needed to build on the elections or opportunities of 1999 and 2003. They say those opportunities had been missed. And also for even the last election, they had one or two things to say. But how much, do you think we have put, taking all of those reports to ensuring that this process tomorrow and throughout is a success?
Well, those reports are taken on board by Nigerians generally. I remember when Jimmy Carter came to observe our elections, and he was so disgusted with the elections that brought his good friend as president. But Nigeria believes that it's not a developed democracy. So there will be all sort of deleterious aspects, things that we need to take care of. In my own experience too, when we write those reports, we submit reports to the government. Of course, we first meet the president or chair of the Electoral Commission, all the foreign observers, but we know our limitations. What I find resentful in Nigeria is this attempt to patronize, to treat us as kids, as, we are not mature. And somebody has to tell us the white father knows best. I resent that. It reminds me very much of my literature days, of Shakespeare, the attitude they have, whether you look at Othello, or whether you look at... The white man has this race supremacist tendency, which I resent. And especially some of the ambassadors here in Nigeria, some of them should be called to order. Either sent back to their country, to suspend relations with them. You can't be interfering in the affairs of a sovereign nation.
Mr. Tommy Vincent, I see you nodding, but are we really mature?
I think, like Prof said earlier, it's a work in progress. And I must say that we cannot say we are still where we were 20 years ago. Yes, somehow, like the Bourbons, they said they learned nothing and whatever over time. But the truth is that we had moved. And whatever democracy is out there that we're trying to emulate, it took them a process to get to where they are. And it's still not perfect, even to date. So it's a work in progress. And so when you see foreigners, diplomats, trying to breathe down the neck of, and somehow in some other climate, it's not acceptable. You just have to mind your space. This is an internal process. You allow it to pass. Howbeit, it might not be as perfect as you have wanted it to be, but there has to be respect for the space and for that entity called and that nation you're representing. All
right, we'll come back to this in just a moment, but we need to get to Anambra State. We've got the resident electoral commissioner there, Mr. Nkwachiku Orji. He joins us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Mr. Orji. Well, yes, at the time, it was reported that about 4,695 cartridges were gutted by fire in the state, in the containers that those materials were kept. What is the current situation at the moment about it? Ms. Orji, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning.
All right, go ahead.
The situation is stable. We have managed to stabilize our operations. And I'm happy to say that we have received smart card readers from all over the country, which we have prepared for the elections. As we speak, we have prepared smart card readers for all the local government areas in Anambra State.
So does that mean then that there isn't going to be any shortfall of any of the sensitive materials for the elections?
Exactly. I don't expect any shortfall. Yesterday, we received all the other sensitive materials from the central bank, and those have been sorted and distributed to all the local government areas in the state as at 11 p.m. yesterday.
What can you tell us about the security situation? How is INEC cooperating or working with security agencies to ensure that what happened to those materials don't happen again?
Adequate arrangement for security has been made. We have men of the Nigerian police and the other security agencies in their full numbers in Anambra. Of course, there have been other incidents which they are quickly checking.